行ってきますギャラクシー君に恋するエンドレスリーそして見せてねトンネルのファンタジー Fly into the moon.
Before she got the title The Knave and changed her name to Arlecvhino, our protagonist for today was known as Furina, a small child born in the region of Conria. During the era she was born in, there was a crimson moon whose light shone on every part of the region. And of course, like any era, it was under the rule of a person from a specific family. Let's call them the Crimson Moon Dynasty. At that time, one of the leaders of this family suggested to the ruler to create an organization responsible for sheltering all the children who come from outside this world, in the hope that one of these children would have the ability to surpass the kings in Celestia. Indeed, the ruler agreed, and this organization gathered a large number of orphans from Conria, from all walks of life for a long time, until, one day, the Crimson Moon was replaced by a dark sun. From that moment, a new era began for the region of Conria, under the rule of a royal family called the Eclipse. Consequently, the era was named after the family, and this era continued to rule Conria until the cataclysm struck 500 years ago, and the civilization of Conria completely collapsed. From that period until now, the events that occurred are very confusing, and it's hard to know what exactly happened. All we know is that Furina eventually found herself in the House of the Hearth in Fontaine, an orphanage belonging to the Fatui organization, which I talked about in detail in the suggested video on the screen. But in short, they are an organization from the region of Snezhnaya under the rule of their queen, the Tsaritsa. The ultimate goal of this organization is to overthrow the rule of Celestia. To achieve this, the Tsaritsa formed the Fatui Harbingers, the 11 best members of the Fatui in every aspect, whether it's intelligence, power, or authority. Each of these Harbingers was responsible for interfering in the affairs of a specific region in Teyvat. In the case of the Fontaine region, the Harbinger number 4, Cryo, known by the title The Knave, was responsible for interfering in the region's affairs. This was done by managing the House of the Hearth. You might ask me how? When you take a first look at the House of the Hearth, you'll see it as the perfect place to raise orphan children, because the place itself is large and beautiful, and Cryo herself was the perfect director. Her smile was friendly, her behavior was pleasant, and her actions were tender. She always preferred taking care of her family of orphans from the hearth, more than anything else. So much so that all the children in the hearth called her mother. But the stories the mother used to tell, if any normal child who didn't grow up in this hearth heard them, their blood would literally freeze and their bones would start to tremble. Because through these fantasy stories, she told tales that encouraged the children to kill each other, so that in the end, the strongest among them would win and get the title of king. Because this mother, in reality, never considered the House of the Hearth her home. And the children in this hearth were, to her, just countless sacrifices for conducting interesting experiments. After encouraging the children to kill each other, she would take the winning child to Dr. Dottore laboratory. Here, they would begin conducting various types of experiments on them to create the best warrior to serve the Fatui. Basically, even this goal she didn't think about most of the time. Cryo and the doctor conducted the experiments for fun only. Unfortunately, Furina found herself in this place, but she didn't remember anything about her past, so she assumed she was simply born in Fontaine and her parents, for some reason, abandoned her. But since childhood, she was different from the other children in the hearth. While the other children were full of energy and vitality, Furina was cold and quiet. This made the other children in the hearth stay away from her because of her different appearance and strange behavior. But despite that, as soon as the mother saw her, for some reason she started to favor her over all the other children in the hearth. She took care of her more than her own biological daughter Clairvy, who was another child from the hearth. Her mother forced her to enter this place since she was 6 years old, to prove to the other children that she doesn't differentiate between her daughter and the other children in the hearth. From the moment Clairvy entered this hearth, she tried in various ways to escape the place to gain her freedom again. But every time she was caught, her mother would punish her in an unnatural way to be a lesson for the other children in the hearth. Consequently, Clairvy was the only one who saw the true face of the mother, while the other children considered her the perfect mother. As for Furina, she was hiding a secret that no one in her new family at the House of the Hearth knew about, which is that since childhood, she had a strange ability that allowed her to use the element of fire, but a fire whose color was red, closer to blood, and different from any other fire. But with time, It turned out that this power was more of a curse than just a strange energy. Because whenever she surrendered to the situation and wasn't fully focused on controlling herself, this power would take over her and start eating away at her body. This issue started gradually at first, from her fingers when her spider died, then to the palms of her hands, until it finally reached her forearms, where these parts of her body would turn a black color, like burnt charcoal. And if this curse continued to take over her body and reached her shoulder, it might take over her heart completely. And this would make her, in quotes, change. But this aroused the mother's interest in Peraware even more. At that time, on the day her spider died, the mother sent her daughter, Clairvy, to console Peraware. From that moment, a friendship began between these two, which was unexpected, especially since they were completely different people. Peraware was very cold and didn't care about anything that happened in her life, while Clairvy was full of energy and vitality, and always strove for freedom. Perhaps their friendship became so strong because of the one thing they had in common: their knowledge of Cryo's truth. Because after the mother discovered the firepower that Peraware had, her interest in her reached its peak, to the point that she couldn't bear to wait for Peraware to surpass all her peers in the hearth before starting to conduct experiments on her. No, from the first look at her unique ability, the mother knew that she was the strongest among them, and she would become the king. So from that time, she started taking her continuously to the doctor's laboratory to conduct experiments on her, under the mother's supervision. And through these experiments, Peraware learned that life is full of suffering. But at the same time, no one taught her the meaning of surrender. Therefore, Peraware was always trying to strengthen herself, even though her body was filled with wounds from the continuous battles and merciless experiments. And as we said, these experiments were happening away from the eyes of the other children, so naturally, no one knew about them. And even if they did know, the mother would come up with an excuse to convince them, because their minds were already washed with the mother's words, and they would believe anything she said. The proof is that they consider killing their friends in the hearth to win the King's Challenge as something normal that everyone does. But from that moment, Peraware started to daily calculate the power difference between her and her mother. This continued for 10 whole years, during which Clairvy tried to escape from the place several times. She tried to convince her mother to stop the experiments on the children, and even tried to convince the other children in the hearth of the mother's truth, and how she is a cruel person with no mercy, who doesn't care about the lives of the children at all. But, as usual, it was to no avail. And each time, she was punished more severely than before for her actions. So one time, after Clairvy turned 16, her close friend Peraware had an idea. Since escaping the place was impossible, why not get rid of the only person keeping her trapped in this place, and kill the mother? This way, we could win our freedom. But unfortunately, Clairvy refused, and her excuse was Cryo's superhuman strength. But Peraware could tell immediately from one look at Clairvy's eyes that the real reason behind her refusal to assassinate the mother was that despite everything she went through, she still saw her as her mother, and the idea of her killing a member of her family was an impossible thing. So Peraware continued to train and strengthen herself, and was defeating the other children in the hearth day after day, until one day, Peraware was chosen to be a competitor in the King's Challenge again, which, as we said, involves 2 children from the hearth competing to the death, and the one who wins this fight is crowned king. And unfortunately, her competitor in this challenge was Clairvy, who, by the way, thanks to her, some children survived the King's challenges, because she would encourage them to reach a draw, so that neither of them would die. But of course, with time, the mother noticed this, and forbade it. And now, Clairvy is standing in the King's Challenge, in front of the only person who stood by her side all these years. Perware tried again to convince Clervy that they should unite to kill the mother instead of one killing the other, but unfortunately, to no avail. In the end, Clervy decided to let Perware end her life. And although Clervy was dying, for the first time in her life, she felt happiness, because she would finally get her freedom after all these years. She thanked Vaporware for freeing her, and apologized for not agreeing to her plan to kill the mother before finally succumbing to her injuries and dying, leaving her only friend alive. After Clervy fell, and the rain began to wash away all the dust and fog of the battle, Peweri stood in the middle of the battlefield, after now becoming the new king. But even though Cryobena's daughter died and sacrificed her life for her friend, and even though Vaporware proved that she was the strongest among the Hearth's children, Cryobena's madness had completely taken over her, so she didn't feel even a moment of sadness for her own blood daughter. No, the most important thing for her was power, and her ambitions for Peweri were still far from reach, so she continued conducting experiments on her, and this continued for a whole year after Clervy's death. On one moonlit night, a pyro vision descended upon Peweri without warning. This circular vision covered the shape of the moon exactly, and shone with a red color, just like the era of the crimson moon in Conria. Was this her wish? Was this the fruit of hundreds of days and nights of continuous thinking and training? This question was destined to remain unanswered. So she didn't bother herself with it. She simply hid the vision in the closest place to her heart. But from that moment, she realized she had reached a sufficient level of strength, and this would be her only chance to execute the plan she had been thinking about for years. So, in the same place where Peweri killed her close friend a year ago, she faced the mother in a direct fight. But no matter how much she tried, just as her friend had said, the mother's power was extraordinary. After several failed attempts, Peweri had only one option left: to surrender to the situation and allow her curse to take over her. This, as we mentioned at the beginning, caused the blackness to spread all over her hand, but through the mysterious curse within her, she was then able to get back on her feet. With a single blow, she stuck the mother to the ceiling of the hearth, before using the inherited firepower from her lineage to kill Cryobeina for good and blow up the entire hearth. After the dust settled, the little girl that was Peweri was a child no more. And to this day, there is a small gravestone in the place where the mother was killed, written on it in Peweri's handwriting: "Here lies the last light that appeared from the sunset, and here, the light of the coming dawn finds its welcome." And this is how Peweri was charged with the murder of the mother by the Fatui organization. Throughout the period she was imprisoned by the organization in the Snezhnaya region, she offered no explanation for her actions. Thus, she remained imprisoned for a while in the region until one day she was summoned for judgment to be passed on her. But contrary to expectations, the jester Piero explained to her that Her Majesty, the Tsaritsa, forgives her for all her actions, and from this day on, Peweri will receive a new name and title: Her Path Filled with Blood. This title will be the Knave, while her name from this moment became Arlecvhino. She never mentioned the name Peweri again, because now, she didn't just kill a harbinger, she didn't just become a member of the Fatui, she has now replaced the previous Knave and became number 4 of the 11 Fatui harbingers. And the first thing she did after taking this position was to erase everything related to her past from existence. She went back to the records of children's names in the House of the Hearth and burned whatever remained of the records, one of which, of course, contained her name and her friend Clervy's name. After that, she rebuilt the House of the Hearth in the form of a hotel located in Fontaine City itself. But this place was completely different from the previous Hearth in every aspect. First, the children no longer fight in battles to the death to prove who is the king. Second, all children are allowed to leave the Hearth as they please, unless they have a mission. And third, all children must call her father, not mother, because she doesn't want to associate herself with a title like mother again, a title from which she saw nothing but evil and cruelty. And this is how Arlecvhino became the father to countless orphans in the House of the Hearth, And the few children who survived from Krukabina's time, like Fremine, testified to the huge change that happened to the place under the father's administration. Previously, just entering the place would make you feel suffocated and know that you will be trapped here forever. Whereas now, the atmosphere inside the hearth has become full of vitality. And for the first time, the children feel like one family, not just targets they have to get rid of to become king. And after a period of these events, Arlecvhino met the Tsaritsa herself and received from her a delusion, a sign of the Tsaritsa's satisfaction with her, and a badge of honor that all Fatui members are proud of. But despite that, and despite Arlecvhino not bowing to anyone, not even a king, whether one of the seven or from Celestia, she took care of her vision more than the delusion, even though the vision is a gift from the gods in Celestia. Maybe because, for her, this vision is proof of her rejection of her past life and an assertion of her control over her future from now on. Anyway, during this period, the merciful Tsaritsa allowed Arlecvhino a personal meeting with her superior in this organization, Piero, who, while his expressions were hidden behind his half-mask, told Arlecvhino, "I know that you still have feelings like doubt and dissatisfaction, so I will answer 5 of your questions, related to the world or related to you." Of course, Arlecvhino appreciated the gesture's directness, so she said to him, "Then I want you to guarantee that you will not answer my questions with ambiguity or deliberate confusion, and try to lie, answer with reservation, or play with words." And indeed, Piero agreed to this point and immediately began to answer the first 2 questions that came to her mind. Why did they choose her, and why did he accept her? The answer, in short, is because the weak will sacrifice themselves to achieve their dreams, while we are ready to endure all hardships to stay alive and achieve our goals. As for the 3rd and 4th questions, they were as follows. What is the origin of my power? And what is the meaning of the crimson moon that I see in my dreams constantly? Piero replied to her, saying, "Previously, I served in the last ruling family of the kingdom of Conria, and the name of this family was the Eclipse. But before them, there was another ruling family called the Crimson Moon." Thus, through his answer to this question, Arlecvhino was able to know the truth of her past and what her origins are. But after this incident, she continued to claim that she is from Fontaine because, in general, since her main job is the hearth located in Fontaine, the idea that she is also from the region would make a lot of things easier for her. As for the 5th and final question, it was as follows. What will happen to me and the rest of the children of the House of the Hearth after the Fatui achieve their goals? Piero told her, "I will be frank with you. None of you have a place in my future plans. But I guarantee you that the Tsaritsa is a queen who loves all people, so she will ensure the fulfillment of all of humanity's desires." And as you can see, guys, we've reached the end of this video. I hope you liked the video. Write down in the comments what you think of Arlecvhino's story and whether you got the character or not. As for me, unfortunately I haven't gotten her yet, but I'm trying my best to get her because honestly, a character like this, with a story like this, I can't possibly miss out on her. So wish me luck, guys. Though they won't get the support that's worth the effort I put into them, but your support with likes is the only thing that keeps me going. So I hope you support this clip with a like, share the video everywhere, and if you want to see more Genshin stories, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you for your support, and goodbye.